Psquare pretty much shattered the core of their fan base, and both brothers have made a deliberate effort to move away from the brand and the legacy of Psquare. Afrobeat news people, guys, it's me Kelv, and welcome back to Afrobeat News, your number one source for Afrobeat entertainment and just coming at you. Don't forget guys to like and subscribe as well as turn on post notification, and stay tuned for more Afrobeat related entertainment and gist. So guys, as you guys can see from the first clip, today we're going to talk about the one and only Psquare. Now I'm sure you guys are really expecting me to tell you guys, how Psquare fell off, what happened to them, what exactly caused their fall off. Now I'm just going to be straight up with you guys. First of all, Psquare never fell off. I need to let you guys know from the start, Psquare never fell off. During the early 2010s, there were three main people leading the Afrobeat movement. We had Two-Face, we had the Band, and we had the one and only Psquare. Obviously Psquare, like both of them, was twins, but let me just say musicians leading the charge. Like I said, you had Psquare, then you had Two-Face, and finally you had the one and only the Band. Now during that early 2010s and all of that, the Band had already started showing signs of falling off. He had just signed his deal with, of course, Kanye West, and wasn't really putting out much hits again, and people were starting to feel like he had lost it. Same thing with Two-Face. Two-Face wasn't really putting out so much hits as he used to, or people had started getting used to his sound and people were trying to move on from that. But Psquare, during that period, they were still active and fans were still craving for more from Psquare, because we'd gotten used to the fact that Psquare were just that good, where they never miss. All their albums were just one classic after the next. But what ended up happening was that Psquare left at a high note. Like when they disbanded, fans were still craving for more. I think their YouTube channel was close to hitting 1 million, which was back then one of the most unheard thing in Afrobeat music industry. I mean, that was when most of these Afrobeat artists don't even smell up to having like 500,000 subscribers in their YouTube channel, but this was Psquare having over 900,000 plus YouTube subscribers back then. And Psquare, they were just that big. They had some of the biggest songs on radio all over Africa. They were remixes of their song all the way in Morocco. So these were how impactful Psquare was, and this guy just left and quit at a very, very high note. So if I'm to tell you guys how Psquare actually fell off, what happened, what destroyed the brand, I will let you guys know first of all that they never fell off. What destroyed the brand Psquare was Psquare. Now, let me go on to explain to some of you that may not really understand, right? Psquare, they disbanded. That was what happened with them. Peter decided that he wasn't going to deal with, the group anymore, so he left. And then Paul went his separate way. Now, before I go on to really explain what this disbandment of this group did to their core fan base, let me let you guys know that Psquare, they were one of the most innovative groups in Afrobeat music industry. These guys have a legacy that I feel is actually beyond explanation. They redefined what it means to be an African musician. They made it look good. And I think it was because of Psquare that, prices for these musical artists went off the roof. And we have to take that in mind, because nowadays, the most shocking thing is that if you ask some of these new school cats, I'm talking about people like, Rema, Joe Boy, Fireboy, Omale, Bella Shmurda, Bad Boy Themes, Check, Black Bones, Thames, all of these new school cats are coming up in the game. If you ask them about their influences, who are your influences, who inspire you to do Afrobeat music, or would you look up to? Most of them would call Wizkid, most of them would call Burna Boy, most of them would call Davido, most of them would go as far as calling, a Fela Kuti, a D'banj, a Wande Cole, but hardly would you hear most of these artists call Psquare as their influences. Now, the question that comes to mind is, what happens to the legacy of Psquare that most people don't seem to remember that this iconic group is there? And definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, this iconic group influenced everything we know as Afrobeat music. Why is it that these artists don't seem to reference, reference in terms of reference them or cite them as an inspiration? Even though we all know that Psquare definitely inspired most of these artists, how come they don't call Psquare, or they don't seem to recall that these guys were a huge part of the industry? And that's something that I have to explain in this video. But before I even go on to explain that, let me re-emphasize that Psquare, they were such a dynamic group. They really find, like I said, what it means to be a musician in Africa and in all over the world. These guys were responsible for innovations in African music that were just completely unbelievable at the time. I mean, before their time, shooting videos was something that artists never take serious. I mean, before them, you can check some of the videos that artists used to shoot were completely crap, bullshit, waste of time. Psquare were able to redefine what it means to shoot and direct a proper music video. With their Busybody remix, they changed cinematography in the Nigerian music industry forever. You can go back and trace it. All their videos were some of the best videos. Their brother Jude Okoye, which for some people that may not know, is part of the Psquare. Now, I need to explain to you guys, Psquare is actually 3 people. 3 people make up the Psquare group or the Psquare brand, and these are all brothers. You have Peter Okoye, Paul Okoye, and then you had Jude Okoye. Now, Jude was more of the silent member, the silent partner, the more behind the camera kind of partner. Why Peter and Paul, of course, they were the stage performer. They were always in front of the camera. Now, when I said Jude Okoye was behind the camera, I meant that both figuratively and literally, because Jude Okoye was responsible for not just managing this group, he was also responsible for directing most of their videos. If you go back to most of Psquare's classic videos, it was directed by Jude Okoye, and this guy was directing videos that was world class, that could compete with American music directors, A-list musical video directors. That was the extent that Jude Okoye was directing at a time where it was completely unheard of. This was, the 2000s, the late 2000s, the early 2010s and all of that. Jude Okoye was directing really banger music videos, and it was from Psquare that the other artists started catching up, trying to make their video as clean, as crisp as Psquare did theirs. And not just with the music video directing, with music itself, Psquare was one of those very, like I said, dynamic group. They could sing their ass off. That's what I just need to state. They, like, both brothers could sing their ass off. Like, Peter could sing as good as you can think of. Paul could sing as good as you can think of. And when I mean sing, I mean like sing, like Waje kind of sing, like Tiwa sometimes kind of sing, like hit those notes, create those melodies very well. That's what I mean. And they can also do Afrobeats. Now, I know some people might be confused what I mean do Afrobeats and sing. Now, what I mean to tell you guys is that not every Afrobeats artist can sing, right? Let's say, for example, Davido, right? Davido can't sing for shit. Like, he can't sing to save his life. I don't think he can hit good high notes. I don't think he can create kind of like good melody. When I mean like good melody, like, those kind of Celine Dion, Mariah Carey, or those, those singers, right? I don't think he can. But what he can do is do great Afrobeat music. So what it means is that you don't have to be a singer to do great Afrobeat music. But Psquare as a group, both brothers, by the way, they could sing their ass off. Like, Mr. P can sing, can hit notes, can sing really well. Same thing with Rudeboy, like Paul Okoye, he can sing as well. But not just that, they can also do Afrobeat music. That's how talented these brothers were. Aside from that, these guys can play instruments as well, and they can dance. Now, obviously, most people would say, of course, Mr. P is a better dancer, which I agree, and Rudeboy is a better singer, which I don't really agree, but people have their feelings about that. But both brothers could sing and they could dance. That's one thing about this group. So this group were so prolific. Every album after the next was just classic. No skips. Like, these guys would put out a whole album and it would just change the music space. Every time they put out a new album, it would change the entire Nigerian music space. Every other artist would start scrambling, trying to sound like them, trying to emulate, trying to, create something similar to their sound. Then another year comes, they release a new album, it changes again like that. So Psquare, they define what Nigerian music is. And that is why the question of how come you have this newer generation of artists not citing Psquare as influence, that is why that question is so prolific and so important for us to answer. Now, time for me to really go into, answering that question, right? First of all, one thing you need to understand is that the Psquare fans, I don't know whether we should call them the Psquare FC or something like that, but the Psquare fan base, right? They loved Psquare as Psquare. That's the dynamic Psquare. Peter and Paul, there's this common saying, Peter and Paul, there be one, no be two. Like, we saw them as a unit, as a pair, because both of them complement each other. While Rudeboy was focused on the singing part, Mr. P was focused on the dancing part. And whenever they perform on stage, you could see that dynamic and they flow together. Whenever they are performing in their videos and all of that, you could see that dynamic and it flows very well. That was what made so many people resonated with them, because these were identical twin brothers that embraced themselves and work so well with each other, and people fell in love with that and fell in love with everything about them. Now, that is the core of their fan base. Now, the rest of their fan base were people that actually prefer maybe one of the brother to the other, which I must admit I'm part of that, group. I'd always prefer, Mr. P to Rudeboy, while my sister back then always preferred, Rudeboy to Mr. P. So we had this thing where we always try to put the brothers against themselves just to talk about who is the better brother among both of them. But what I'm trying to explain is that when Psquare divided, when Psquare went their separate ways, which I must state wasn't an amicable divorce, right? It wasn't like these brothers, they talked among themselves like it was a peaceful split. It was a very, very nasty one. Obviously, there's a lot of things that went to it, from talks of betrayal to talks of, not being appreciated, to talks of, tribalism. A lot of things went to it, to wife issues. So it was just very, very nasty. But when they dissolved the group, what they did was they broke the hearts of most of their fan base, which is the majority. The core of their fan base, that's the people that love Psquare's units. They broke their hearts and they lost that core fan base, which is majority of the fan base that actually love Psquare for Psquare. People were devastated. I'm actually sure that people were out there that got heart attack when they heard that Psquare broke up. I'm sure, though there's no verifiable proof, there's no data, no statistics, nothing was collected like that. But I'm sure that people got heartbroken, like literally got heart attack from Psquare breaking up. Like people cried. People, you could see, evidence of people that were so heartbroken that Psquare broke up. And those were the core of their fan base that loved them as a unit.
I woke up like this, and I'm sure a lot of people wake up the same way. I grew up loving Psquare. Psquare, I love you guys so much. Now you want to separate the love I have for you. Why? Why would you let outsiders just come in and spoil these things you guys have been working for a very long time? I don't know what the real issue is, but you guys need to come together, please. Just listen to this song. What happened to the Psquare will be one, will be two? What happened to that song? What happened to the love we see you guys share on stage? What happened to all this time? All these years of hustle. You just want to throw that to the mud? Please come back together. We don't want you guys to separate. Please come back together. Come back together. We all want you to come back together all over the world. Please. Please.
Now the rest of your fan base, where I fall in, were those that prefer one to the other. So when they split, we had to take side. So I took Mr. P's side, since I've always seen him as a favorite, and whatever he said was what I went with. So he said his brothers, both Jude Okoye and Mr. P, they never value his contribution. They were undermining his contribution, abusing his wife, being insulting, being disrespectful to his wife. I believe that. So guess what? I said hitting Rudeboy and Jude Okoye. And those people on the other side, on the side of Rudeboy and Jude Okoye, would do the opposite, which is they would hear what Rudeboy and Jude Okoye have to say about Mr. P, and whatever they say, which was quite a lot, right? Mr. P being stubborn, not willing to work with the group, leaving the group, not attending shows, feeling like he was, he's running the game, all of those things. Now, those people would hear that, and guess what? They would feel some kind of way about Mr. P and maybe start disliking him. And there you go. So when they split, the rest of the fan base that, felt some kind of way about the split had to lean to each of the brothers. So at the end of the day, what has happened is that you have these two faction of former Psquare fan base and are backing either Mr. P or Rudeboy. And one thing is that when one brother is doing well than the other, or this one is doing well than the other, you have people from his camp throwing stones at the other camp. I have the people from the other camp throwing stones at those from the other camp. And that is why I think at some point Mr. P had come out and said that he doesn't really have haters, that people that he has that appear to be haters are actually disgruntled or heartbroken Psquare fans. And that is just easy for you to understand and see. Now, where does this all take us back to? This takes us back to the fact that some of these newer school of thieves, they don't really cite Psquare as influence. The reason they don't really cite Psquare as influence is because Psquare have done everything in their power to destroy the legacy or the brand that we know as Psquare. Psquare pretty much shattered the core of their fan base, and both brothers have made a deliberate effort to move away from the brand and the legacy of Psquare, which means they also are urging people to move away, to move past that, which is like they're trying to let us know that we should put it at the back of our mind. I feel because based on legal reasons as well, both brothers cannot perform songs that belong to the Psquare group because it's co-owned, so they can't perform without the order. So because of that as well, it has done much to also diminish the influence of the Psquare brand. And now you have these people coming out here, people like Joe Boy, remember these new school cats, which may have as well been disgruntled Psquare fans, or Psquare fans who were heartbroken, or they are trying to move on either with Mr. P or Rudeboy. So they don't really feel the need to reference this group, which we all have to agree that we are the most influential group in Nigeria, and their influence can never be understated or overstated, for lack of a better word. So these are the reasons why these guys are not being referenced as much by these new artists, or are not seen as inspiration to these new artists. But we all know the facts, the truths. Now, the question that I feel like we want to know, most people are curious about, is what's next? What's going to happen to the Psquare name, the Psquare brand? Are they going to keep on diminishing? Are their influence going to keep on diminishing? Guys, to be honest, I feel that is the case. If Psquare don't come back together, their name and their influence will keep on diminishing. And that is most likely to happen if Rudeboy blows up on a major scale. Now, of course, Rudeboy is about to drop an album, and with the way Rudeboy has been moving about with dropping singles, hit singles back to back and all of that, people are beginning to feel, and personally I'm beginning to feel, that this guy has a potential of overshadowing the brand or the group Psquare. And one thing you need to understand is that this thing happens to so many groups. Let's start with Plantation Boys, for example. People love Plantation Boys, Two-Face, Blackface Face. Then guess what happened? The group disbanded. Now, everybody had to move on. Even the fans had to move on. Guess what? Two-Face started popping. Two-Face started releasing songs. Then released an album that was such a massive hit that we could not help but forget about Plantation Boys. It was so huge that Two-Face mania overshadowed Plantation Boys, that Plantation Boys became a past thought. And that is what is going to happen to Psquare as well, if Rudeboy's album does really, really well. So if Rudeboy goes on this massive run and release some really classic songs, or release a very classic album, that might actually overshadow the group or the brand we know as Psquare. Another example would be Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. Jackson 5 was this very, very dynamic, prolific group, these whole Jackson brothers. Then, all of a sudden they disbanded and they moved on. And then Michael Jackson came out of nowhere and became this huge, mega global star. And then the whole Jackson 5 name and brand fizzled out because of how impactful Michael Jackson was or became. That can happen to the brand Psquare, and we're already beginning to see that in these newer artists not really referencing Psquare as much. And guys, this is deliberate, people. This is deliberate. This thing is being done by both artists, both Mr. P and Rudeboy. They're doing it so that we can see them for who they are right now. Both brothers have the potential of becoming the next Michael Jackson of the group, right? Mr. P, his album did not really create the buzz that most people would have wanted. Now we're looking at Rudeboy. If Rudeboy is able to really create that buzz, that mega buzz that is going to outshine whatever work the group had done in the past, then we are going to just completely move on from Psquare. Some years in the future, we might not even remember what Psquare is. Kids that are born later might not even know how this group redefined Nigerian music over and over again. But guys, that's my analysis of the whole thing. So if somebody ever asks you, did Psquare fall off? Tell them no, Psquare never fell off. Psquare destroyed Psquare. That's just what it is. And it's unfortunate. I wish both brothers the best of luck. Mr. P, Rudeboy, in their individual career. I hope at some point in their life they choose to, just for memory's sake, come back and at least give us a final run while they are both still alive. And guys, tell me what you think about this, and tell me your fondest memory of Psquare. Guys, that's pretty much what I have for you guys today. Don't forget guys to like and subscribe, as well as turn on post notification, and stay tuned for more Afrobeats related entertainment and just coming at you. I'm out now guys. Peace.